Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce, episode 66. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
And I'm the boyfriend. I'm just thinking of Route 66 and all the things that happened along. I can't believe we made it this far.
I know, what a long journey it's been. Welcome back to another wonderful week of divorce. We are excited to be here. We are really excited about this week because the boyfriend is actually feeling better.
Feeling better, sounding better. Still not perfect, but better.
No, it's been a rough couple of weeks being out sick.
Yeah.
You know, we've kept the guest away. We don't want anyone else to get this. We're being very selfish with a sickness. We don't want to share. So you're welcome. So it's just the boyfriend and I today. And while you're out there tuning in, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. We want to hear from you. If you want to reach out, info@lifelaughterdivorce.com, and check out the web, lifelaughterdivorce.com. Check out the retail store with all of our aromatherapy soaps and candles just for you divorcees. It's all for you. You gonna chime in here, boyfriend? You're just gonna give me doe eyes.
I'm not a divorcee, so it's not for me.
You use it all the time. You use it all the time. Don't even go there.
So therefore, it's for everybody.
Right? And everybody.
Ha ha. Boo. I get this every day, ladies and gentlemen.
He loves
Bad
it.
puns all day long.
We love bad puns. Why? Why not? Who doesn't love it? There are people who hate puns.
Yes.
You're one of them? Really?
I'm not one that hates them, but the bad ones, man, that's just, it's like too low-hanging fruit. You're supposed to be a professional comedian.
Hey,
come on.
You know, you just got to keep throwing stuff out there until eventually you get gold.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
All right.
You got to keep trying, you know? I mean, hey, what we want people to see is just the really good polished stuff. But, you know, it doesn't start out that way.
Which is why you use the soaps. You clean it up. That's terrible.
Oh, boo. Back at you. Boo. Oh, you guys, it's been a crazy couple of weeks here at Life, Laughter, Divorce. Not feeling well, going through all kinds of dental work, all that good stuff. So we are back and glad to be back and on track. And one of the things that came up in a conversation with a friend the other day, we were talking about divorce and...
Really?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
What? Mentioning the pod, talking about divorce. And one of the things that we were chatting about is, you know, those people who... How do you say it? They're just not ready for divorce. And you know they're not ready. Like if you've gone through divorce, you know what it takes to get to the other side. And then it seems like we've all had those friends who've come up to us later and they're like, you know, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. What do you think?
Well, let me ask you a question. That brings up an interesting question because since you've been through two of them, so you went through one, you actually made the choice, you went and you did it.
Yep.
You got married again fairly quickly, and then you decided to get another divorce. So did your thought process from the first divorce change your thought process for the second one, for the reasons to go ahead with it, to move forward with the divorce?
No. No.
Were you ready to put up with more things because you didn't want to deal with another divorce?
No, actually. Nope.
Really?
No, it was very different. I knew.
You knew when you got married.
Pretty much. No, my second divorce, there were some deal breakers. So that was just, in my mind, I have always said those would be deal breakers for me. And he knew that those would be deal breakers for me. And when we addressed the situation together, you know, when we talked about our differences together, and I said, you know, we've always had those, we'd always been open. How do I get to the point?
I don't know.
No, the answer is no. I didn't tolerate more in my second divorce because I thought, oh, I don't ever want to go through this again. I was like, oh, no. I know exactly what I need to do.
Well,
And
that's interesting because I could see it both ways. That if you've been through a divorce, either you don't tolerate as much and you're out because you know you've been through the process of divorce and you're like, I get it, it's not that bad, I can get through it. Or the other side of it, I'll tolerate more because I don't want to go through another divorce.
Right. I think, yeah, I think with my second divorce, I was like, oh no, I know exactly what I do. This needs to end and we need to part ways. But I do notice in other relationships later that I've kind of rethought that as to maybe I shouldn't be so quick to leave. Maybe I should put in more effort. And in relationships later, I've tried different angles of that and not leaving so quickly because I'm like, well, maybe, you know what? Maybe I'm being too cut and dry. Maybe there's some gray area in relationships and things can be worked out. Maybe I need to look at it with a different perspective. And I tried that. And you know what? No.
But from a person for someone else's help of understanding how to and what to do in relationships or not specific things, but when to get out, when not to get out, those kinds of issues of relationships, having experience and listening to people with experience from different types of relationships can be very helpful, right?
Yeah. Oh, it can be extremely helpful in talking to other people and finding out what they did. You know, it is very helpful on so many levels, providing you're talking to the right people. And, you know, if you're surrounded by if you're in a marriage, I found this for me. If I'm in a marriage and I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who are single or divorced and doing their own thing, I'm going to be influenced much differently than if I'm surrounded by other couples and people who are in long-standing relationships and are good at them. I'm going to get very different advice from those two groups of people.
No, of course.
So I think one is I knew when I wasn't ready to divorce because I was, for me, when I was out asking questions about divorce, number one, that's a signal that maybe you're on the verge. But if you're continually questioning and going over the same thing over and over, maybe there's still some confusion there and you're not really ready to get divorced yet, right? But I also have to consider, who am I asking? Because that also shows me what answer am I looking for. If I'm asking people if I'm out with my single friends and they're having a great time and we go out for a drink or something and I'm asking them for advice, well, I kind of already know the answer that I'm going to get.
Yeah.
The influence I could possibly be getting.
Well, you want advice from people who have been through it and can give you both sides of it.
Both sides of it.
Versus just the fun types or the relation types.
But at the same time, if I'm asking, okay, so let me approach it this way. If I'm talking to you about something that happened and I'm specifically leaving parts out because
then you're holding them back on purpose. So that answers your own question.
But exactly. I think by going and seeking information from certain sources that could be very biased one way or another, could give you your answer right there as to what you're looking for. You already know your answer.
So pay attention to yourself. Pay attention
to yourself and who you're seeking out for advice.
Yeah.
Now, going back to what you're saying, maybe you're asking single people, maybe you're asking married people, maybe you're asking, the experience of parents, or also throw in there, ask a professional, go talk to a therapist who doesn't know you and is completely unbiased in the situation.
Because they'll give you both sides.
And they'll give you both sides from what they see. But if you do something like that, then my thought would be, if you're going to take the time to go speak to a therapist, be completely honest. If this person doesn't know you and you're paying them and you want totally candid honesty, then I would think you'd owe it to yourself to just be totally honest and throw it out there and see.
Well, it gets back to what you said earlier. Yeah. If you don't tell them everything, then they don't have a complete picture, and that means that you're holding back for a reason. and you've got to figure that on your own.
Right. And so you're trying to sway the answer. So if you're in a state of confusion and everything, I would say, enjoy that state of confusion for a while. I mean, and until you truly know, don't make that decision because you're not ready.
Yeah, but I know a lot of people, like some decisions in my own life, how do you really truly know? Sometimes you got to take that leap. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about today. How do you know if you're ready or not? Because if you're in that state of confusion, you don't have to.
And we're talking to an expert today, ladies and gentlemen.
You don't have to make a decision until you really know. Like for me, I was in a state where I didn't really know that for a very long time with, I feel like, my first one.
And that lasted a year and a half?
No. Whatever, smartass. But for me, if I think back in my long time ago when I can barely remember for that moment in time, it seemed like it took me a long time to make that decision. My second one, it didn't take me long at all. I knew as soon as because they were just deal breakers. So I would say if you know the relationship isn't working for either of you, then it's just not working.
Was that like your second one? It wasn't working for either of you?
Yeah. That's where it's like, it was very obvious to me that it was like over.
And you mentioned it to him and he was just like, yeah, that sounds about right. And
he just like shrugged. He didn't even say, yeah, that's about right. He was like, a grunt, a shrug, and a walk away.
Off with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So if it's not working for both of you, that's probably a good sign. You should
just
go for it.
Cut it loose, man. And like I think that when it's not working, it's pretty obvious it's not working. There's just no interest. So,
but then there's the other side. What if you're just questioning it, and the other person, and you bring it up to the other person, they're like, "Well, I'm not ready to end this. I want to try to make it. I want to try to make this marriage work." What do you do?
That's a really good question. Well, what have you
everything? I guess, right? Yeah. You try everything to try to save it.
Well, that's just it. Why not? I mean, you can totally try everything. Before, why not? What do you have to lose? I see divorce as like the last result, right? And if you have someone who's willing to work on it, what a gift. I mean, that's truly
that's a really special way to put it, and it's and it's special being a positive thing because that's not necessarily true in all relationships.
Yeah, so I mean that's really a gift that someone's willing to work on it. Now, if you're the one willing to work on it and the other person's not interested, you may have to reconsider that because that's kind of different.
But if you both want to work on it, then
why not?
What do? You get individual counselors, you get marriage counselors, you set up date nights, you change the routine. What do? You gotta change something.
Yeah, I think it can start small. And that I guess is going to depend on the couple. So depending on what's going on, boyfriend, every time we have a podcast and we talk to people about what's going on, it comes down to communication. They somehow stopped communicating. And I think that whatever it is you can do to open up lines of communication and have those just daily conversation, be involved in each other's everyday life again. I think for me, anytime that there's a problem, my significant other is talking to somebody else. The communication has moved and I'm no longer in the conversation. Or they're no longer in the conversation. So if you're thinking about like, maybe you've been working a lot or your spouse has been working a lot, their conversation may have shifted and they're communicating with other people rather than you. How can you shift those conversations?
Well, that again comes down to both people wanting to be a part of it and working together. So then you just, you start communicating together and open up those lines again.
Yeah. And by communicating, remember, it's the little things. It's not always a big, serious conversation because everybody dreads those. Those are pretty scary. It's just
we need to have a talk.
Right. Oh, I hate those words. So if you guys, if one person is willing to do it and you're ready to like test the waters again, start small, or go get therapy or counseling because maybe there's something else going on. Maybe there's health issues, maybe there's depression. Maybe it could be numerous things.
There's a lot of depression going on right now.
Yes, a lot.
It's being more diagnosed more and treated more, which is good. And
I think it's more easily talked about too these days than it used to be.
Yeah, it's a more open topic than it was. Yeah.
So if it's just one of you, if for sure one is all in and ready to work on it and the other's on the fence, maybe seek out some counseling and see if there's something else happening in your life that has shifted, or maybe even sometimes people get, if there's health issues or medications in play. I've talked to numerous friends that have had problems where all of a sudden the relationship shifts, we've talked to several guests on the pod who've had that, they didn't know they were suffering from depression and things like that. So it's definitely worth checking into.
But that gets to another issue is, like you said, health issues. So you got to do what's right for you and your own health and everyone around you and those decisions you make in your life. So take care of yourself and make sure that the other person or your spouse or whatever isn't hindering that, right?
Yes, I agree. So like if there's any sort of physical abuse, I mean, those can be deal breakers right there because you have to put your physical and emotional self. If it's emotional abuse, look at what it's doing to your health. So if this is a very toxic relationship or something like that, then, that could be.
We need to get somebody on here because I truly don't. We need a therapist on here because I truly don't understand. And this is my ignorance. I'll fully admit it to our audience. Why a person, because men get physically and emotionally abused too.
Yeah.
But why anyone in a relationship who's being abused stays in that relationship? That's one that I don't.
Well, that has come up.
It's come up, but
with Carolyn, like for instance, if people stay in because shame or guilt. And those emotions that take over because it's embarrassing to talk to people about those things. And a lot of people, especially if it's emotional abuse, that's very hard to prove. And people who haven't experienced don't understand that. And
it's hard to recognize too.
It's hard to recognize. And even when you're in it and you are being emotionally abused, in your mind, you're like, maybe I'm just traumatizing, or maybe I'm making too much, or maybe it's my fault. Maybe I deserve that because, it's kind of crazy making being in a toxic relationship where there's some form of abuse, whether emotional or physical, but also people stay because of financial reasons. They don't have the financial independence to get out. And we've heard that from several of our guests.
We've heard it.
If they had money in their pocket, they would have left.
I'm curious from the other side, from the professional standpoint side. How do you break that cycle? What are some of the deeper reasons? I'm just curious. It'd be interesting to delve into.
Yeah. So if we have therapists and stuff are listening and you want to come and talk to the boyfriend and I on this topic, we would love to have you. But there's so many deep rooted issues.
Oh yeah.
On that one. And that's really, really challenging. Which leads us to believe if you yourself are wishing that your significant other would die, that's probably not a good sign. You probably need to get out.
Well, if you've been abused or had those things occur to you in your health, and you probably
wish they would die. So yeah, red flag. Get out. But
that also leads into listening to your gut sometimes. So you may not wish them to die all the time. That's
right.
But sometimes your gut's like saying, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to listen to that and be able to make those decisions. Some people unfortunately, some people don't listen to their gut anymore. They listen to other people. They listen to what they see on the interwebs. They do all this other stuff, but they don't pay attention to that inner
instinct.
Yeah.
And we're animals. We have instinct.
Boo.
We are, though. We have animal instinct, and we know when something is wrong. That's kind of like when you hear one of your friends saying, "I looked at a cell phone," or "I looked at her cell phone," or "I went through her purse," or okay, if you're looking for something, chances are something's up.
Or you're going to find something and make a bigger deal of it than it is.
So, right. One, you're extremely paranoid. Or two, you really know that something is happening. So, yeah, but there's a difference between being paranoid, because maybe you've been in relationships before where people have cheated or have done bad things, and you're now projecting that onto your new partner. So that's a case of like, come on, is it real, or are you just looking for a fight? But then there's that instinct where you're kind of like, like something doesn't feel right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an instinct saying the other person is cheating. There's just an instinct that just says this isn't right.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Something is up. Something has changed. Something is, it. So maybe that's the time, rather than snooping, is having a conversation. And I think we all know
communication.
Our partner well enough to know when they're not being on the up and up. So again, your spidey sense. Pay attention to your spidey sense. Yes. So true. So another way that you're not ready for divorce, another signal that you're not ready for divorce, is if you really hope that your marriage works.
Yeah, because you have it's two people working together on an entity or on a thing to make sure that this thing, the marriage, moves forward. If it's just you, I want this to work.
Yeah.
I want to do whatever I can to make this work, and I'm gonna push really hard, and the other person can sense that.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Why are you changing? Why are you doing these things? It's kind of weird. Then it can get all the way to the point where sometimes, and I've had this done to me, I don't know if it's been done to you, they make threats.
Huh?
Yeah.
Because they really want it to work?
Yeah.
What kind of threats?
Like I'll leave you if, and trying to use the reverse psychology threats and all these things. It's
veiled threats. Those are terrible. If you're going to throw an ultimatum out there, you better be ready to.
Yeah, it's like gambling, man. You're going to put your money on the table. You got to lose it.
If you got to be ready to lose that bet, and if you're threatening divorce, you got to be ready for divorce if that's what you're putting on the table.
Yeah, like, don't use divorce to keep the marriage together.
Yeah, that's ugly. Nobody likes ultimatums. Nobody.
No.
They really don't. You got to be able to stand by your word. Like, that's...
Which is why, again, the communication and having a plan to go forward together is really important.
Yeah. And if you really hope that, or if there's signs that you guys can work this out, maybe just the separation. Like, there's other steps before divorce that can be taken. So if you're contemplating, maybe we just need to be separated, then you're probably not ready for divorce. Like, take the separation. No.
Did you do that?
No. Why would I do that?
Okay.
In my case, in my particular situation, I was like, no. I moved out and said, how do I like that? I like that. And then I kept going. So,
okay.
I don't think it was any sort of formal separation. It was just like, bye. It was so long ago. God, it's hard to remember. This is the point you want to be at where you're like, what happened? Why? I don't remember. That's a really good place to be, you know?
It's also, well, you also have memory issues.
I don't remember what I did yesterday. But it is nice when you get, 20 years later, you're like, I don't really remember all of that. It's over 20 years.
Well, so you know what that tells me? For all of our listeners out there, Time does heal.
It does. Does. And, for all the years I was doing stand-up and I had jokes, about relationships or marriage or stuff, it kind of like, it's funny. And it is good. But now I'm like, I gotta write new stuff because I don't always want to talk about those things anymore because now it's just, I can only remember a select number of things. So I've kind of already used that material. I need new material. That's why I have boyfriend.
Great.
Gotta get new material. That's why you get new relationships. So
one thing we haven't mentioned is we've always went off of things from like your divorces, which included just you and your husband.
Right.
But what if there are kids involved? That I know a lot of people who've been through a divorce, they either try to make it last longer because the marriage itself lasts longer because of the kids, or stick it out because of the kids.
People say that all the time. No, I'm just here for the kids. All the time. If I could have $1 for every time I've heard somebody say I'm staying here for the kids. And I'm looking at them like, you want your kids to think that this is a normal relationship?
Kids know, man.
Yeah.
They are very
smart,
perceptive. They may not be able to articulate it, but they definitely see it.
Yes.
And they try to understand those actions or those emotions, but it's hard to understand. And then if that's how they're developing, why would you want them to develop like that? Because then they have a more likely chance to be in a relationship like that. Do you want your kids to be in a relationship like yours? Especially if you want to be divorced or not? No,
I wouldn't have. I mean, and so many people are like, well, we're going to stay together until the kids are older. Why? Your kids, if you were to ask your kids, are probably like, get out. Please leave.
I get 2 Christmases. I get 2 Thanksgivings then. Right? Get out. End it.
Bye-bye. But we've heard from people saying like, no, I was glad when my parent, like I knew they should have been divorced. Like everybody's like they see you live in the same house. Like you're not hiding anything.
And then afterwards, mom's much happier. Dad's much happier. So that's
like, and it's just, they're relieved. They've got to be so relieved. And we've talked to a few children of divorce and they're like, yeah, like why would they stay together? And
it has affected them in their relationships moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
Sam wanted to do something exactly different than her parents, and she recognized that.
And so did Karen. Karen was like, oh, it was terrible. We were so relieved when they split.
Yeah.
So if you're questioning if you should stay for the children, what? No. I mean, there are going to be the exceptions to the rule, but think about
how that's emotionally developed, how your children are emotionally developed under that situation.
Yeah. Because what example are you setting? So I guess some things to look at. And kids, even little kids, going back to Cole Patterson, like she said, remember when she said her kids, how perceptive they were, even the little one, and asked her questions about, just think about that. All right. So what if you recognize that you and your husband have different values? Okay.
Like you should know that before you get married, right?
Yeah, right. If you guys don't have values, just don't. Why are you? What are you doing?
That's a dating thing. You should figure out who you are before you get into this contractual relationship before. Yeah, I would just figure it out before.
Unless, of course, he's been lying. That does happen. If one person's been lying and suddenly you're in the middle of a marriage and you're like, he has a whole other life I didn't know about. That happens. And suddenly, and people's, and maybe it could be anything. It could be whether all of a sudden he's cheating, that his value has changed a little bit, or other things. You don't know. Some people do really creepy things, So suddenly you realize that he's not the person, or she is not the person that you thought they were, and suddenly like a mask is taken off. And we've talked about that with narcissists in relationships. That happens. If you recognize that you and your spouse have different values and they're not the person that you thought they were, that may be a very good reason to end it. Lots of deception.
Yeah, again, communication, trust. If you can't trust and don't understand and know who that other person is, then it's not a
if
marriage.
you suddenly find another ID in the house with a different name and address on it, that could be a flag.
So say you go through everything and you finally said, all right, I am going to go through with this. I am going to go forward with the divorce. There's some things you need to think about before you do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need a plan. You know, like you have to formulate a plan, and not to be like, I'm going to get everything and I'm going to run to the bank after this or something like that. But even before you talk to a spouse, like I kind of had to have a plan in my mind. Like, what does this look like? What's the long game here? And try that on for size. Like what is the outcome I'm seeking?
So is it an actual plan or just a mental plan?
I think it's both. I think it starts with a mental plan, you know, because it starts with a basic thought or idea. And it's like, well, what does this look like? Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about divorce. Well, I think there's the emotional side of the plan where it's like, how do I feel when I picture myself without this person? That's the first step. It's like, is this doable? Is this something that I can move forward on? And I think once I go through the emotional plan of like, can I do this? How do I feel with this decision? Do I feel like it's the right thing to do? And get through kind of those emotions, then I can move forward with more of a like, okay, what would the first step be? And I think a lot of that came out when we talked with people like Modern Split.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And it's a downloadable video series. And basically, it's kind of like getting all of your ducks in a row, because I know when I talked to my attorney, he gave me some very good advice. And especially if there's potential to be any conflict, or if you're confronting somebody on information that maybe you found something that's going on, or something new has come to light that hadn't been revealed before, or something like that. Sometimes it's good to have these conversations in a public place, because not always. If you think it's gonna, if you have some laundry to share, probably not. But sometimes if you think that so in abusive relationships, they recommend that you leave without saying anything. There's different tips and tricks to learn and maneuver. But sometimes it's good to have it in a public place, because people remain more calm and you can leave. But if there's any chance that it could become extremely high conflict, or you could be put in danger, don't do it where, you're in a house that's miles away from any sort of help or assistance or anything like that. You don't ever want to put yourself in a situation where you can't get away easily, or you can't seek help. So keep those things in mind. But my attorney gave advice, like, to keep things just calm in general. Sometimes you can go somewhere where it's not like a public place, but you can go and have a conversation to kind of keep things calm. And I think that's kind of good advice, And so think about like, okay, when I talk to this person, how do I go about doing it? Where do I think the appropriate place is going to be? What have our conversations been like in the past, and what do I need to make sure, in case, maybe even tell a friend that you're having this conversation, so like they can know to come by and get you, or to check on you, or to call you and make sure you're okay afterward, or whatever it is, because you just never know. We never know how the other person's going to react when we put it out that we're leaving, and that can just raise the stakes considerably. So I think that's really super important. But also in developing a plan, I think it's important to know where can you go afterward, because depending on the situation and what the reaction is, do you need to leave immediately? Do you have a bag packed? Do you have things packed? How soon will you have to get out? Like, once you tell this person, how soon do you have to move? Every relationship is different. Some you guys could live together for a month or two or longer because one person can go into another room or something. But other relationships, not so much. You may have to have like things in a truck in the driveway kind of situation. You don't know. And then, but also a financial plan. And I know finances have come up a lot when we talk to people about, staying in relationships because they just didn't feel they would be able to make it on their own. Figure out, even if you don't have like a stockpile of money somewhere, what does your budget, what do you need to live on? What do you spend? Get an idea of where you're at financially and what are some alternatives? What else could you do to supplement it? Could you get a roommate? Could you move back with family? What's the situation? And really assess that and kind of have a plan in mind that you can put into action, and know those things. But yeah, I think those are the most important things to consider when moving forward with that. And also, knowing. The other thing that's come up is like some people like, what do I do legally? Is this something we want to do just together and file on our own? Is this something we need a mediator for? Is this something that we need separate attorneys for? Is there a lot of stuff to work out? And I know that my attorney said, hey, if you guys are on talking terms and there's not any major conflict here, it's better if you can sit down at a kitchen table and say, this is what I want. This is what you deserve, and work it out that way. If you can have that conversation and really just be fair. I mean, don't go crazy. Like there's no, the more crazy you go with what you want into extremes of like taking him for all he's got, the longer it's going to probably drag out.
And it turns out that you're paying more for the lawyers and you don't get much more than you think you would get anyways. Right.
So really kind of have a plan, and I think working through emotional stuff first is really helpful, and then coming to terms with working out what's in your brain. And I think Claire mentioned that, like because when you go to an attorney and stuff, they're going to work with your brain. So you got to be clear. You got to be focused. The emotional stuff, that's therapist stuff. So get that stuff done first and get to a place where you can have a clear head and have a plan. Because if you're not there yet, you're not ready to get this divorce, because divorce is a big deal and you got to be prepared.
Yep.
And by all means, going back to what I was just saying about having a plan about where you're going to tell somebody, like if you aren't prepared to have that talk, that's a sign that maybe you're not ready for this yet. And we just heard on the news the other night that here's an example. Rudy Giuliani, this is not political, but just as an example of a person who went in a press conference and announced his divorce. That's how his wife found out. Like he didn't even tell his wife that he wanted a divorce. He went and did it in a press conference.
I guess that's one way to do it, to avoid the public confrontation.
So if that's the route you want to go, have that planned, have a date, call the press, alert the media, and all that good stuff. But there's a lot to consider. And you'd asked me this a couple of times, like, how did you know? And I think it's different for everybody. But I think all of these steps, we've been talking and thinking about this, like, this is a process. Like, it's like, I don't know, the 12 steps to divorce. Like, you have to go through it mentally and prepare. And there's a lot to it.
So I hope our listeners got something from this.
Yeah. And what did we leave out? Is there anything that we're forgetting that maybe should be added to the list of, preparing? Are you ready for divorce or not? When do you pull the trigger and go?
That's every situation is different. So give us what actually threw you over the edge, or what helped you make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your, yep, I got it. I know. I'm good. Let's move forward. Speaking of moving forward, boyfriend, I think it's time to move forward.
Where are we going?
We're gonna cut this episode loose right here. It's super early today, so I hope our listeners have a wonderful day. We're looking forward to getting some guests on here now that the sickness is gone and we're feeling better. Boyfriend, I'm glad you're feeling better.
So am I.
Oh my gosh, that was a terrible flu.
Yeah.
You guys, I hope that none of you have it. Stay healthy out there. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.